We're not spending some time with 2022 Alan Kowicki, driver development program, Kowicki Cup champion, Dylan Zampa. Dylan, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Great to see you. I'm really well. It's neat to look back on 10 years of the program already. I get to host the Bull Ring, which has been a show that's kind of carried through since the inception on Racing America about all the cool people we get to talk to. Now over 50 drivers have had a chance, but you were a driver that's among the select few that got to do the program as a finalist in 2021 before another year and a championship. How did that all play out for you? How many times did you apply, and how did 2021 help you win the Kowicki Cup the following year?
Yeah, so the first time I applied was in 2019, and I made it to the semifinals, I believe, and then didn't make it into the final seven. And then obviously COVID happened, so reapplied finally back in 2021 and made the final seven, and had a good year. Started off a little slow, in my opinion, just trying to get the hang of everything that was going on. I was new to the social media, posting a lot, and obviously, I had a lot of good competitors in there. Luke Fenhouse, which is one of them, and he ended up actually winning that. And yeah, so he started off strong because he kind of already knew what he needed to do. And by the time I got the hang of it, it was too late. He already had a good gap ahead of me, and he was just posting a lot more. And he won a lot of big races, especially like the Slinger Nationals. That helped him a lot. So I learned a lot from him, and obviously help from Jeremy Doss as well. So going into the 2022 season, I kind of had a game plan set in stone from day one, right when we got selected, and just kind of took off from there and just had a tremendous season, and just won a lot of races and did a lot of community service, and just really good to help the community in need. And yeah, it just was a phenomenal season for us, and to keep it going, these past couple seasons after winning it, it's just been phenomenal with all the opportunities I've been having.
So was it Brett Yackey out of Colorado in 2018, the champ, the one that kind of got you thinking about it? Or maybe Jeremy Doss? Did you race Legends with him before he got a chance to race late models or pro late models with you? I mean, how did that formulate where you're like, you know what? I think this program could be something I really want to follow and start applying as soon as 2019?
Yeah, so actually, it was actually my brother. He applied in 18, I believe it was, and he was a semifinalist, and he had the phone call and all that, and he didn't get picked. And then my dad, and he was going into football and all that stuff, so he kind of took a step back from racing. And my dad was like, "Hey, why don't you want to try it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" I didn't know anything about it until you know I got picked as a semifinalist. And so I started doing a lot of research about the program, and I talked to Jeremy, and just got a grasp on what it was. And it's just such a phenomenal program. I had a blast being in it for 2 years, and especially all the racing I got to do. We did 26 races both years, so it's just a lot of racing. And it's a family thing with my family. We work out of a 2-car garage, so I get to work on the race cars. Hand in hand. I know the backhand of I know the race car on the back of my hand. So it's just it's always good to race with family. I don't know any other way, obviously. So going to the racetrack in a motorhome and a trailer, that's just kind of how it's been since day one when I started racing when I was 5. So
And you've got a lot going for you, Dylan, in terms of racing and performance, but really the competition you raced and faced against, and you still do in the Pro Late models, and now the limited Pro Late models under the Cars Tour banner out west. Also, you're racing with the established Spears SRL Tour for a long time. I mean, those guys are studs, and we're talking about tracks that are all the way up and down the West Coast into Colorado. I mean, there's a lot of travel besides. Who all is part of the circus that's called Zampa Motorsports?
yeah, so it's all just family friends, right? My spotters, Jason Fensler. I don't know if you know who that is, but he was a big time West Coast guy way back in the early 2000s when he raced against my dad.
Mhm.
And those two were always going head to head. So now he's part of our crew, and he actually started out with being my brother's spotter. And then after my brother stepped away from the racing to pursue college and play rugby, he came down and started working with me. And it's just me, my dad, my mom, my girlfriend, Joe Roderick. He's been a long time help of my dad from when he raced, and Jason Fensler as well. So it's a very small crew. We have a couple other buddies who used to work on other crews when my dad used to race. We got a couple guys who used to work on Jeff Anthony's car. So it's just all family friends. So it's just always a good time at the racetrack. We always try to have fun, and obviously we want to win. So, when race time comes, it's, game face on. And then after that, we all just sit by the trailer and sit by the car and just, have a good time.
Two of your biggest seasons, 2021 and 2022, you're a Kawicki Driver Development Program finalist. Winning the Cup in 2022 took a lot of effort. Took a lot of effort off the racetrack. What kind of social involvement were you doing? What kind of other things were you doing? And how often were you getting phone calls saying, you need to be back in the shop. We're here till 5 a.m, work on this thing while you're out doing something for the community. It's got to be kind of something you had to balance, right?
Yeah, and it was also hard because I was in school also. I was a senior. So, actually my semifinal Zoom meeting for interviews was actually while I was at school, and I couldn't, they had to schedule it around, around their time. So I actually was luckily my woodshop teacher was a big help and allowing me to, he would let me sneak away from woodshop class during school hours and go do some community service at the food bank in Napa. And, just I wouldn't. Oh, did I lose you? There we
I
go.
lost you there for a second. Yep. It's
All
okay.
right. Yeah. So, my woodshop teacher was a big help to me, and I always thank him to this day. I always see him, at the football games here and there, and he's always asking me, he's like, "You still racing?" I'm like, "Yep, all still racing almost every weekend." And so, yeah, and I would be able to sneak away a couple times during the week working on race cars, but I'd get the phone call like you said, and be like, "Hey, we need to scale the race car. Where are you at?" I'm almost done
Here's a
wrapping up
mannequin
here.
that weighs 121 pounds, just like me. Put him in the seat, right? Here's
Yeah.
some sandbags. It equals my weight. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, my woodshop teacher was probably the biggest help in getting me in that program. So always props to him, and he was always a great teacher also. So and actually, I'm still doing that. I'm still woodworking. So after I graduated high school, I went right into being a carpenter. So
Oh,
doing that still. So that's always cool.
so I imagine it's always hands on for you. It's always about learning. How much did Alan Quickie help kind of mold that or make it possible in saying he did it with 17 guys, I think it was, including the engine shop. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, but that motivation, that ability, did that have anything to do with maybe what you're doing these days?
Yeah, the main thing that really stood out to me about Alan was that he just did it on his own, right? He did everything, right? He worked on his own cars and, he traveled, with the team and just, that stood out the most to me because that just reminds me so much of my family and my team is, actually when I get done on this call, I'm actually going to go out and start working on the race car. So, it's just, stuff like that really stands out to me, is just he worked on his own stuff. And that's just a really big part of why I really loved the program was just, I felt like I related to Alan so much. And when he was at the track, he was, such, he had that, about him that he just wanted to win, right? He wanted to win everything. And that's just how I feel me and my team are when we're at the racetrack. We, practice, everyone just wants to be quick time, obviously, so trying to be the quickest car there in practice qualifying and especially in the race, that's where it matters. So that's just what really stood out to me about Alan.
You are still winning races. You're leading the points in the limited Pro Late models when it comes to the cars Tour West. You're also fifth in points in the super lates with the cars per, late models. I'm guessing there's a lot still going on in your life, including some double dip weekends. So how do you get two cars in that trailer out of the two-car garage to go racing on the same race weekend at the same racetrack?
Yeah, that's the part, about having a two-car garage. It stings a little bit sometimes. I see some pictures of some of my competitors in their shops and they got the lifts and everything. Man, that would be so cool if we could have that, but yeah, sometimes we got to pull both cars out and one car sits out in the driveway and got to work on it out front, and then the other car gets scaled inside in the garage, and then it comes in on a open trailer hooked up to our truck, and we go out there and we just try to kick some butt. That's kind of the only thing. I just want to make it known that we don't have all that fancy stuff that you see a lot of other teams have. So, but it definitely is hard, especially in the summertime. Racing double duty is definitely tough. But got to stay hydrated and work on the car, know what the car's doing. Going from a big motor to a small motor, just gotta balance all of it. But I've done it so much now that I can tell what one car's doing and correlate it to the other car if it might work or not. But that's just the hard part.
On the outside, the cars look different, but really for you jumping back and forth, the two race cars, they look outside appearances. One's pinkish, one's black, but in reality, they got to drive completely differently, right? Shock, suspension, the whole thing's got to be different with the different horsepower included.
Yeah. The setups are pretty close actually. We have both setups pretty identical. Obviously, some of the spring packages that we run on the lower horsepower car are a little bit different, obviously. But yeah, just you got a big slick 10-inch tire compared to a 9-inch slick, so it's a big difference. But I I love the supers. They're just big, fast, mean machines, and I just love racing them. So we didn't get to race that last super race at Kern. The car was torn apart after Colorado, and just didn't have enough time to get it ready. And we were obviously fourth in points and not too far back, but it was just hard to get both cars out there. And we had a smaller team than normal, so only a couple guys went. So it just would have been hard to manage both cars. So we made the decision not to race the super at Kern, and obviously, it stings a little bit, but we have 3 cars, so it makes it rough. We have a pro late, limited late, and a super late. So I think we're going to try to bring the pro late out at the next Kern race in November, and maybe just shake it down because we have some plans to race that at the end of the season in December. So we'll see how that rolls.
Let's see, November 15th on the West Coast. The only thing I know of in December could be in Pensacola, Florida. I don't know. Is that something that might be ringing a bell?
It could be, possibly. I don't know. We'll have to stay tuned for the Facebook announcement, but it sounds about right. Something in December.
Hey, speaking of Facebook, I did see on your socials that you did a picture. I think it was back in April. You posted of your shop. It's on the driveway. One race car on jack stands. The other one's in the shop. And I will tell you that one of Alan's main rivals here in the Upper Midwest. I live in Milwaukee, so I got to see Alan's first shop. I also know Joe Shear had the same size shop you do. Alan's first shop was a 2-car garage behind someone else's house, not his own, someone else's house that he got to take. I think it was an old aunt or somebody like that, an aunt or a friend of a family or something like that. But the size of the shop does not equal the size of the heart and the motivation. I tell you that right now. It doesn't matter what you have. 7-time ASA national champ Mike Eddy said, I don't win with what I take it to the track with. I win with what I unload off the trailer to go racing with. So there are things to be proud of, but also there's things, as we now know, as a Quickie Cup champion, Dylan, you've got some things figured out with what you have and the means you have. But it's got to be so cool knowing that you got a chance to still live on in this 10-year legacy of the Alan Quickie Driver Development Program. There's some other left coasters. We're talking about Hayden Plyman, Cole Raz. I'm sure others are still bugging you all the time, right? For, hey, how do I get involved in the program? Or is it worthwhile? Is it worthwhile for you?
Yeah, I've tried to get a couple of the younger drivers here on the West Coast, some of the junior late model guys. And I've had a couple people, like Holly Clark, she's applied to it many times, and she's always, asked me for some tips. And I try to give her the tips that I use, and obviously, she's really big on social media, so that's a big help also, and she's got a lot of following. But yeah, I've had some other people like Robbie Keneally, he's an ARCA driver, so he's actually asked me about it a couple years ago, but now he's an ARCA, so can't really do it now. But
yeah, and he won a race too, so I don't know if he's out, if he overqualified or not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I've a couple other people have reached out about it, but I just don't think a lot of those people can manage to do 15 races, and it's just so hard to do 15 races out on the West Coast right now. I think next year though there's going to be a lot more races out here, especially with Kevin Harvick helping, and Tim Huddleston's doing a great job of getting a lot of racetracks to come in contact with him, and supposedly there's going to be some exciting news for next year, so I'm excited, obviously. And I don't even know what I'm going to be racing next year. It could be all 3 classes, it could be 2, could be 1, but we'll see where it takes us. And obviously I wouldn't be in my position right now if it wasn't for my parents and Randy Hedricks. And Randy's been a big help with me, letting me race a super late model for him and letting me now race a pro late model for him. So obviously he's probably one of the biggest sponsors I have right now. So without him, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Opportunities and exposure, no question, are valuable in any form. When it comes to getting the national recognition as a Quickie Driver Development finalist, 2 times over, and then winning the cup, it's got to be a great knowledge base based upon the fact that success has come to you at such an early age. What would you say to these kids that are applying, say, come January 1st, when the portal opens again on QuickieDDP.com to enter and be considered for a finalist position in 2026? What would you tell them?
Yeah, the main advice is just be yourself. Let the board members and everyone on your social media just see who you are. Post pictures of you around the shop. Make sure you work on your race cars. Make sure you know what you're driving. Make sure you know the back end of it. And just make sure you're always updating your fans. Everyone wants to see. I always get messages. Hey, when are you going to post another picture of you working in the garage? We want to see what's new. And so they don't get to see these. Obviously, I put them up in my room.
Big
So
checks, baby, big checks.
yeah, big checks. If there was room in the garage to put them up, I would totally put them up there. So while we're working, we'd be like, man, this is what we're working out of, and this is what we're winning. So, one day I might make some space. I might add on to the garage. But just be yourself. That's all I can say. And I've grown over the last couple of years being in the program. I was just some kid who just was super hyper and just would just talk a lot, and so being in that program definitely taught me to just take a little bit of a chill pill, and just let everyone know what's going on in your life, and just be more personal with them.
Last question for you is about Alan's determination. I saw him. Friends of mine saw him at the shop, saw him at the office, if you will, in the garage at a NASCAR race, and he looked right through people because he's so focused on things. But I think one wonderful thing about this program is it allows you to open up. You have to open up, right? To people that want to come to the car, have said, hey, I traveled 7 miles or 7 hours to see you race. I've only read about you. Those kind of things, that kind of awareness, how does that kind of satisfy or make it fulfilling for you, knowing all the work you're doing to go racing, much less represent the Koike program?
Yeah, definitely. Determination, that's a big part of racing, obviously. And, when you're at the racetrack, man, it's so hard when you, especially when you're practicing or, getting ready to qualify or get ready to race, and someone comes up to you, and you're trying to get in that mindset of, just trying to win, and they come over and they're, talking to you, sometimes you got to just, detach a little bit from the racing and just, obviously, communicate with, especially if it's a fan, I always, try to talk, especially if there's, little kids coming up, and they want to be a race car driver. The first thing I always tell them is you want to sit in it, and that always lights up a kid's face. And, whenever I, try to make someone's day, I try to make it happen. But also, managing the racing is definitely, and especially with fans, it's tricky. But, over the last couple of years, I've kind of figured it out, and, I just try to have a good time when I'm there. Obviously you want to win, and, the determination is a big part of it.
You won your fourth big race just last week at a Kern County Raceway, now called Kevin Harvick's Kern Raceway. It's got to be kind of cool that you got a big racetrack like that, a show place among all the other cool racetracks you get to run at, and you are excelling and exceeding at that level to this day. Dylan, I can't thank you enough for being part of this program, and it's really cool to hang out with you for a few minutes and get to know you. And as the kids watch this, take notes about how to go about it, because Dylan spent 2 years in the program, and he's winning races to this day with the determination and the foundation he learned through the process of going through the program. So, Dylan, thanks again for your time, and really appreciate it. Follow Dylan on socials as well. Zampa Motorsports has a lot going on. It's pretty cool to follow what you guys are doing.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.